It happened in broad daylight, on the busiest street in town, where everyone could see. The old woman standing beside the faded blue porch didn't scream for help or beg me to leave. She simply looked into my eyes with tears she had been holding back for years and whispered that one sentence that froze every person watching from across the road. She said she had hoped I wouldn't listen to any of them. In that single moment, every warning I had heard suddenly felt suspicious, every rumor sounded hollow, and every judgment the town had made began to crumble before my eyes. That if you believe kindness is stronger than fear, forgiveness is more powerful than revenge, hope can heal even the deepest wounds, and everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a thoughtful comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us of the good still waiting in the world. When Rowan Mercer accepted a temporary job delivering documents to rural properties outside the small town of Ashbrook, he expected long drives, quiet roads, and ordinary people. Instead, on his very first morning, he discovered that one address made every local uncomfortable. The elderly clerk at the general store paused before handing him the envelope. A mechanic shook his head as Rowan filled his truck with gas. Two women watering flowers across the street exchanged worried glances the moment they noticed the address written on the package. Every conversation ended exactly the same way. They warned him not to stop at the old Whitmore house. Some claimed the woman living there was dangerous. Others insisted she had destroyed every relationship she ever touched. A few simply said she wasn't worth anyone's kindness. Rowan wasn't the type of man who ignored warnings lightly. He had spent most of his 34 years believing that people usually had reasons for their opinions. Growing up with a father who judged quickly had taught him how easily distrust spread from one person to another. After losing both parents within a short span and watching relatives argue over property instead of grieving together, Rowan had quietly withdrawn from the world. He worked hard, kept conversations polite but brief, and rarely allowed himself to become emotionally involved in anyone else's problems. Still, something about the strange consistency of those warnings unsettled him. It sounded less like concern and more like a rehearsed story repeated so often that nobody remembered where it had begun. The drive to the Whitmore property wound through golden fields sparkling beneath the late morning sun. Wildflowers stretched along the roadside, and gentle breezes carried the scent of fresh-cut grass. Nothing about the peaceful landscape matched the fear that had filled the townspeople's voices. The house itself looked weathered but beautiful. White paint had faded with time, ivy climbed one side of the porch, and colorful flowers bloomed with remarkable care around the front steps. Whoever lived there clearly hadn't given up on beauty. Rowan knocked once, expecting hesitation. Instead, the door opened almost immediately. Standing before him was Eleanor Whitmore, a woman whose silver hair framed a face marked more by sadness than age. Her eyes searched his expression before softening with visible relief. Then came the words that changed everything. She quietly admitted she had hoped he wouldn't listen. There was no bitterness in her voice. Only exhaustion, gratitude, and the fragile hope of someone who had waited far too long for another human being to arrive without hatred already planted in their heart. Rowan handed her the envelope, expecting the visit to end there, but she hesitated before asking whether he might spare a few minutes. Something inside him told him the real story had never reached the town square. Inside, sunlight streamed through spotless windows, filling every room with warmth. The furniture was old but lovingly maintained. Family photographs covered the walls, though several empty frames suggested memories too painful to display. Eleanor offered lemonade and apologized for keeping him. She explained that very few people crossed her doorstep anymore. As they spoke, Rowan found nothing resembling the monster everyone had described. Eleanor listened carefully before answering questions. She smiled with genuine warmth despite obvious loneliness. Her hands trembled slightly whenever certain memories surfaced, but her kindness never disappeared. The envelope she had received contained legal documents confirming the final transfer of ownership for several acres of farmland she had refused to sell for decades. Rowan noticed tears filling her eyes as she folded the papers carefully. She explained that many years earlier, the land had belonged jointly to her husband and several neighboring families. a devastating drought nearly destroyed everyone's livelihoods. During those desperate months, Eleanor's husband had made financial decisions that accidentally protected their own property while leaving several neighbors exposed to bankruptcy. Although he later tried desperately to help them recover, resentment spread quickly. When he passed away unexpectedly from a heart condition only months later, grief transformed into blame. People needed someone to hold responsible, and Eleanor became the easiest target. Rumors replaced facts, kindness disappeared, children grew up hearing stories that painted her as selfish and heartless. No one remembered the truth anymore. Rowan listened quietly, recognizing how easily pain could become tradition. He thought about his own family and how misunderstandings had hardened into permanent divisions because nobody chose to ask difficult questions. Before leaving, he noticed several handwritten letters stacked neatly beside the window. Eleanor admitted she wrote encouraging notes every week to people facing illness, unemployment, or personal loss. She never signed them because she knew recipients would throw them away if they recognized her name. Instead, anonymous words of hope quietly reached families throughout Ashbrook, even while many of those same families continued speaking badly about the woman who had comforted them. That revelation stayed with Rowan long after he drove away. Over the following weeks, work repeatedly brought him near the Whitmore house. Each visit revealed another layer of Eleanor's quiet generosity. She grew vegetables far beyond her own needs and left baskets anonymously on struggling families' porches. She repaired children's bicycles abandoned near the recycling center before returning them without seeking recognition. She spent hours restoring old library books damaged by age because the town could no longer afford replacements. None of it matched the reputation she carried. Rowan gradually found himself asking gentle questions around town. Instead of accusing anyone, he simply wondered aloud whether anyone had personally witnessed the terrible things they claimed Eleanor had done. Most people couldn't answer. They repeated stories told by parents, parents repeated stories told by grandparents. Truth had vanished somewhere along the way. One afternoon during the annual Harvest Festival, Rowan noticed a little boy collapse near the community park after suffering a severe allergic reaction. Panic spread instantly. While frightened adults searched for help, Eleanor happened to be walking nearby with a basket of vegetables she intended to donate anonymously. Without hesitation, she rushed forward, recognized the symptoms from caring for her late husband, instructed someone to retrieve emergency medication from the child's mother, and calmly kept everyone focused until medical professionals arrived. Dozens of people witnessed everything. For the first time in decades, they saw Eleanor without the filter of old gossip. There was no anger. No revenge, only compassion. The boy recovered fully, and his grateful parents publicly thanked the woman they had spent years avoiding. Their courage encouraged others to question long-held assumptions. Conversations began changing. People who had ignored Eleanor for years suddenly remembered small acts of kindness they had once dismissed. A retired teacher admitted anonymous flowers had appeared after her husband passed away. A widower realized someone had quietly repaired his broken fence every winter. Several families discovered that grocery gift cards arriving during difficult times had likely come from Eleanor all along. Ashbrook slowly confronted an uncomfortable truth. Its greatest mistake had never been believing one rumor. It had been refusing to question thousands of repeated ones. Even so, forgiveness didn't arrive overnight. Some residents struggled with embarrassment. Others feared admitting they had been wrong for decades. Eleanor never demanded apologies. She simply continued living exactly as before, helping whenever she could. Rowan admired that more than anything. One afternoon he asked her how she had endured so many lonely years without becoming bitter. She smiled gently before explaining that bitterness punishes the heart carrying it far longer than the person it targets. She said hope required daily practice, much like tending a garden. If neglected even briefly, weeds quickly convinced people nothing beautiful could grow again. Those words reshaped Rowan's own life. He began reconnecting with relatives he had quietly abandoned after his parents died. Difficult conversations slowly replaced silent resentment. Old misunderstandings lost power once people finally listened instead of assuming. Months later, the town council organized a community appreciation gathering beneath bright autumn sunshine. They invited Eleanor as guest of honor, though she seemed almost uncomfortable receiving attention after so many years of invisibility. One by one, residents approached her. Some apologized through tears, others simply hugged her. children who had once been warned to stay away now presented handmade cards thanking her for making the town kinder than they had realized. The little boy whose life she had helped save handed her a bouquet of sunflowers and smiled with complete innocence. He didn't know anything about decades of gossip. He only knew she had been there when he needed someone most. Perhaps that was enough. Perhaps every generation deserved the chance to begin with truth instead of inherited prejudice. Rowan watched the celebration quietly from beneath a large maple tree, feeling grateful he had ignored the warnings that morning months before. Sometimes courage wasn't climbing mountains or facing impossible odds. Sometimes courage simply meant knocking on a door everyone else avoided. As the afternoon sun bathed the town in warm golden light, Eleanor looked happier than anyone could remember. The loneliness that had once filled her eyes had been replaced by peaceful gratitude. She hadn't won because everyone finally admired her. She had won because she had refused to let other people's cruelty define the person she chose to become. Before this story comes to its close, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment and tell us this: have you ever discovered that someone everyone judged unfairly turned out to be one of the kindest people you had ever met? Your story may inspire someone else to look beyond rumors and choose compassion instead. Rowan eventually accepted a permanent position in Ashbrook, not because of the job itself but because the town had reminded him that people could change when they found the courage to face the truth. Eleanor never became famous, and she never sought recognition. Yet her quiet example transformed an entire community more effectively than anger ever could. The old blue porch remained a place where flowers bloomed through every season, and visitors no longer arrived carrying suspicion. They arrived carrying gratitude, homemade pies, fresh stories, and genuine friendship. The house everyone had once feared became the place where neighbors gathered to remember that kindness often survives even the longest winters of the human heart. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. And wherever life takes you, may you always have the courage to look beyond rumors, open your heart before passing judgment, and become the kind of person who gives others the second chance you would one day hope to receive.